Welcome back, everyone. This is DA Sports. I'm your host, DASASIN. Thank you. This is episode number 25. Today, we got a few things to get into. To start, we're going to get into my segment on a ledge. Then, after that, we're going to recap my picks from NFL Week 13. Then, of course, we're going to finish this week's episode with my top 5 and worst 5 NFL rankings after week 13. So let's get into it. So to start, we have to get into my segment on a ledge. Now, this week's topic for On a Ledge is the hit that everyone is talking about from the Houston Texans versus Jacksonville Jaguars game. It involved Azeez Al-Shaair hitting Trevor Lawrence, and he ended up with a concussion, and he was in the fencing position, and a lot of people were saying that it was a dirty hit. Today we found out that Azeez got suspended for 3 games. So my on a ledge statement is that I believe Azeez Al-Shaair should not have been suspended at all. I'm okay with the flag being thrown on the play, but I don't think he should have been fined, and I don't think he should have been suspended at all. Nor do I think it was a dirty play. And here's why. In today's game, we see every single week there are more and more quarterbacks who run for yardage. Some of them are design run plays, some of them are scramble plays. And with all the quarterback protections that we have in today's game, a lot of these quarterbacks are taking advantage of the fact that people are scared to hit them. So you'll see quarterbacks run along the sideline, and then they slow down a little bit, and then realize when the defender pulls up, then they get extra yardage. Or they slow down in the middle of the field, and then the defender thinks they're going to slide, and then they juke them or run past them or dive forward and get the first down. This case was the case of a defender approaching a quarterback who was scrambling out of the pocket in the open field, who was running towards the first down line. Now, Trevor Lawrence clearly made in his mind that he was thinking about sliding, but by the time he actually did get into his slide, it was right before the first down marker, which is exactly where Azeez Al-Shaair was trying to meet him to stop him from making the first down. I'm going to put images in this episode to show you frame by frame exactly where they were apart and where the slide actually started and exactly where the contact happened. So for starters, from this first image, you can see that they're a good distance apart from each other. Trevor Lawrence is clearly committed to the run at this point, and Al-Shaair, as you can see off to the side, is making his way towards him. And you can see the yellow line marker in the middle that shows where the first down is to get. Now, in this next frame, which is 1 second later, you can see that this is the first time that Trevor Lawrence's knee goes down. In the previous frame, his knee was not down at all. Now, some people are saying, well, this is where he was trying to begin his slide, but he's not down. He's just breaking down, which means from that breakdown, he could either juke left or right, he could either stop and dive forward, but in either case, the defender can't assume that he's going to slide. In this second frame, as you can see, where his knee finally hits the ground, his body is still completely upright. So you can also see that Al-Shaair in this moment has already decided to launch at the quarterback to stop him from making the first down marker. Now from this other angle, you can see 3 different pictures of right before the hit and then the aftermath after the hit. You can see from this angle here that, yes, Trevor Lawrence is now on the ground. But as you saw from the previous screen, he had already committed to making the tackle. Now he realizes, like, okay, he's making a slide. So Al-Shaair puts his arms up in front of him, because one of the biggest things about making contact to the head or neck area is also about leading with your head or neck. So if you're leading with your helmet, that's an automatic penalty. Al-Shaair doesn't lead with his helmet. He's not trying to have forcible contact. But at this point, he had already committed to the tackle. And with Trevor Lawrence keeping his body upright, and I believe Trevor Lawrence is 6'5", 6'6", so he's still a good ways up. Now in this next screen, you can see as they start to make contact, Al-Shaair is putting his forearms in front of him, and that's the part that makes contact with Trevor Lawrence, right in the neck area. And then in the last screen, you can see where they collide. Now Trevor Lawrence starts to hit the ground. I think the biggest part about this thing is that people are judging his suspension based on how Trevor Lawrence reacted to the hit, which I think is unfair. It's not Al-Shaair's fault that Trevor Lawrence got concussed on this play. It's Trevor Lawrence's fault that he didn't make up his mind and slide earlier, especially considering this wasn't fourth down. This wasn't even third down. This was second down. He also knew he wasn't going to outrun Al-Shaair. So if he was really not trying to get to the first down marker and he was really going to slide, then he could have got down a lot faster. He didn't. So you can't put this on the defender for hitting him in the head, especially when he didn't lead with his helmet. He hit him with his forearms, and the result of the play was Trevor Lawrence got concussed. He was left in a fencing position and then was on the field for an extended period of time before they put him on the cart and took him off the field. That's not Al-Shaair's fault, nor should he be punished for it. Now, I'm not mad at Trevor Lawrence's teammates backing him up and being defensive and going straight after Al-Shaair while he was on the ground. That's fine. Is it a penalty on their part? Yes. But as a teammate, you got to back up your teammate. So I'm not faulting the other Jaguars for having the back of Trevor Lawrence. But there's no way that they should have fined nor suspended Al-Shaair. The league as a whole are reacting to the outcome because people are, oh my gosh, a quarterback got knocked unconscious. Yeah, it's football. That's part of the game. And if you run the ball and you're playing football, the likelihood is you're going to get hit and you're going to get hit hard. And sometimes when you get hit hard and your head hits the ground, you might end up with a concussion. Now, yes, quarterbacks may not be so adept at having these type of hits often, but that's not the defender's problem. When you turn yourself from a quarterback position to a running back position by escaping the pocket, you are now susceptible to any type of hits that come from anybody else. And you should not be awarded any special protection, especially when you already have things in place to provide you protection, but you don't utilize them correctly, like by sliding correctly and getting down. So there's no way he should have been suspended. There shouldn't be all this outrage, calling it a dirty play. Yes, I understand that Al-Shaair had other plays earlier in the season that he was flagged, penalized for, and fined. Yes, I understand that in an earlier game in the season, he punched somebody in the face, and that's not a good look. But we can't judge this hit by previous incidents that occurred with him. So that's my statement for this week as a part of my On a Ledge. Now, the next thing we're going to get into is my Week 13 recap. So this Week 13 recap, now remember, my picks that I give out before Sunday, it's a group of 5 picks. The pick 3, my underdog pick of the week, my lock of the week, and then my underdog pick of the week. Now, in this week's pick 3, I said beforehand that this week is probably the most difficult group of picks because out of all of the games that were taking place Sunday, I said I wouldn't be surprised no matter who won any of the games. I felt like all of the games could have gone either way. So I said it was going to be the most difficult, but this week I did go 3-0. That's right, undefeated in my pick 3. For the season, that brings me to 26-10 out of all of my pick 3 picks. So out of 36 picks, 26 of them right. Definitely a great record. Looking forward to continuing going. I hope you guys are betting these picks because you'll be up a lot of money right now. We're going to get into each one individually. Now, the first game that was a part of my pick 3 was the Minnesota Vikings beating the Arizona Cardinals. Minnesota Vikings were favored to win by 3.5 at home. Now, I said before making this pick that I thought that this game might go back and forth, that it would come down to the wire, and that's exactly what happened. Arizona was actually leading for most of this game. Minnesota was able to put together a late touchdown drive and go up by 1 point. They ended up winning 23-22. So they did not cover the 3.5-point spread, but again, we weren't picking them to cover the spread just to win the game outright, which is what they did. It leads actually to a bigger conversation about it seems like Minnesota has been vastly overlooked. It seems like nobody is talking about them, but they still have one of the best records in the league while playing in the toughest division in the entire league. So good win for Minnesota, tough loss for Arizona, but with their division still being all jumbled up, Arizona's still in a good position to still make a playoff push, but it definitely is a great win for Minnesota over another team that was playing very well. Now, the second pick in my pick 3 was the Washington Commanders to beat the Tennessee Titans. This game, Washington was favored to win by 6 points. Now, even though I was right about Washington winning the game, I was actually pleasantly wrong about how they were going to win the game. This was another game that I expected to be close until late, and then I felt like Washington would then pull it off late. In this case, Washington got out to a great start. They pounded them from opening kickoff, and they ended up winning the game 42-19, completely dominant. Now, if you remember from my picks, I said one of the main reasons why I picked Washington to beat Tennessee is because I pretty much assured that Will Levis was not going to have 2 games back-to-back where he was productive. The week before against the Texans, he looked great. They scored over 30 points. And I said, I just haven't seen enough in Will Levis to believe that he can score 30 points in back-to-back games. And also said that it would probably take for them to score over 30 to have a chance to beat Washington. And, of course, I was right. They only finished with 19. And Washington scored well more than 30 by scoring 42. So not only did they win, they covered the 6-point spread very easily. I think it's a great win for Washington, allowing them to bounce back. A lot of people were starting to get down on Washington. There was a lot of negative talk about, oh, maybe they're not really as good as people thought they were early on. Oh, maybe Jaden Daniels isn't as great as a rookie quarterback as we thought originally. No, all of that was false. They just hit a bump against some tougher competition. But all in all, this is definitely a playoff team. They have proved it. Even in the games that they've lost, they haven't looked completely out of place. This is another game where they played a team that was lesser than them, and they proved that they're not on the same level. They're on another level, and they deserve to be mentioned among these other top 10 teams, and they got the win. Now, the last game as a part of my pick 3 was the Philadelphia Eagles going on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. If you recall, Baltimore was actually favored to win by 3 points. I picked the Philadelphia Eagles to win. And I also said that the main reason why I was picking Philadelphia was because of their improvement on their defense. Coming into the season, most people felt like their defensive secondary was their weak spot. But if you watch their games recently in the last, I would say 4 weeks, their defense has really stepped it up. They've been performing like a top 5 defense recently. And I felt like that was going to make a big impact in this game, even though Baltimore is regarded as one of the best offenses in the league. And again, I was right. Even with Philadelphia favored to lose by 3, they did win by 5, 24-19. And honestly, the game wasn't as close as the score suggests. They were actually up 24-12 in the fourth quarter for most of the fourth quarter until Baltimore was able to get a late touchdown. So a lot of people are coming down on Baltimore saying that they lost because Justin Tucker struggles really hurt them. I believe he missed 2 field goals and an extra point, which is very unlike Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker coming into the season was statistically the most accurate kicker in NFL history. He's now dropped to number 2 behind Pinheiro, the kicker from the Carolina Panthers. But nonetheless, yes, those kicks hurt, but I don't feel like that affected the game. Yes, the final score is that they lost by 5, and if you take the kicks that he missed, the difference is 7 points. But it doesn't actually play out to like just, oh, those points are on the board and nothing else changes. Obviously, Philadelphia's game plan changes if the game is closer from the field goals. And I felt like Philadelphia was dominant for the last 3 quarters of the game. Baltimore did get out to an early start. I believe they were up 9-0, and then Philadelphia came back. Saquon Barkley definitely solidified his place right now. I have him number 2 in the MVP race, which is where I said he was before this game. I had Derrick Henry at number 3. I still feel like he's in that spot. I think the one good thing about this game in terms of my predictions is I said all along that Lamar Jackson wasn't the most valuable player on the Ravens right now, even though he had all this hype because of the numbers he was putting up. And I said it was their wins were directly correlated to the production of Derrick Henry. I think this game was another example of where they should have given the ball to Derrick Henry more. Even though he still had, I believe, close to 100 yards, they didn't give him the ball enough, and they lost. And this is the same trend that has gone on in every single game they've lost. So this should get rid of the whole Lamar Jackson for MVP talk, because to me, he's not even in the top 5 anymore, and I didn't have him in my top 5 even as like a few weeks ago. So again, another pick that I was right about, 3-0 this week for my pick 3, and hopefully we can keep it going. Now the next pick for my Sunday picks was my lock of the week. This week's lock of the week was the Houston Texans to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars on the road. The Texans were favored to win by 3.5 points. They actually only won by 3. The final score was 23-20. But again, we weren't playing the spread. We were just playing it heads up. And they won the game. So another win for me on my lock of the week, bringing me to 9-3 on my lock of the week picks. This is actually the 8th correct pick in a row for my lock of the week. So definitely on the roll. Definitely looking to keep this going week after week. Now, even though the score was close in the end, they only won by 3 points. The game wasn't that close for most of the game. The Texans were pretty much dominant from start to finish. I'd say they took their foot off the gas a little bit in the fourth quarter. Jaguars got 2 late scores to pull it within 3. But I never really felt like Houston was threatened from losing this game. Now, of course, it was a division game, and anytime you have division rivals, anything can happen, which is why the final score, I think, ended the way it did. But the Texans rebounded from their tough division loss last week against the Titans to pull out a huge win against the Jags, now extending their lead in the division and kind of solidifying themselves as pretty much a definite playoff participant this year. I mean, technically the Colts are still in range, but I just don't see the Colts catching them. I do feel strongly that the Texans will go on to win the division, just as I predicted before the season. And I'm glad they got this win this week to solidify my pick for the lock of the week. Now, the last recap for my picks this week was the underdog pick of the week. Now, I said that this week was going to be rough. This was one that I got wrong, my underdog pick of the week. So 0-1 this week. Now 3-9 on the season in underdog picks of the week. So, of course, not a good record, but with these picks, they're very difficult. You're not going to hit underdog pick of the weeks, especially from my criteria that I stated. The criteria being that the person who is an underdog pick of the week has to be favored to lose by more than 3 points. For example, I picked Philadelphia to beat Baltimore, and Philadelphia was favored to lose by 3 points. But because I set the criteria of it having to be more than 3 points, I couldn't use that pick as underdog pick of the week. The 2 picks that I said that I was going back and forth between was San Francisco and Carolina. Both of those teams lost. Carolina's game was a lot closer. San Francisco, which is the one that I did pick for my underdog pick of the week, got blown out. It was a complete snowstorm. I did mention that it was probably going to be tough considering you got a West Coast team traveling all the way across country to play an East Coast team in their home during a time of the year when weather is a huge factor. Unfortunately for San Francisco, not only did that play a factor in their ability to execute their plays, I think it also played a factor in the fact that Christian McCaffrey got injured again, and it looks like he's probably going to be done for the season. The early test showed that it's a PCL injury. They say, I guess, technically he could come back from it, but the way 49ers are playing and the way their division is, I don't think the 49ers are even going to make the playoffs right now, which is definitely a shock. But with that being said, I don't think there's really much hope for the 49ers. They haven't shown enough. Brock Purdy hasn't shown the ability to get them over the hump with all the injuries that they've had. The Buffalo Bills look dominant. They won the game 35-10. So even though the spread was 6, they covered it very easily. This game was never in question like from jump. To be honest, I didn't even finish watching the game. I turned the game off in the last like 4 minutes because it was pretty much a done deal. Buffalo had already taken out all their starters. It was just like, okay, let's run the clock and get out of here. And dominant performance by Buffalo. Definitely a sad performance from the 49ers. The other negative for the 49ers is not only did McCaffrey get injured, but their backup running back who started majority of the season, Jordan Mason, also got injured late in the game. So it looks like he's going to be put on IR. So they just got bad on bad on bad. Nothing looking positive for them. And that was my underdog pick of the week. All right, now to finish this week's episode, we got to get into my top 5 and worst 5 rankings after week number 13. So to start at number 1, of course, we got to go with the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions are tied for the best record in the league right now with only 1 loss. I believe they are on a 9 or 10 game win streak right now. They have looked, like I've said week after week, like the most balanced team in terms of being able to execute in all facets of the game, offense, defense, and special teams. Not only that, they're able to do every aspect within each field of the game. So offensively, they're able to run the ball effectively and pass the ball effectively. Defensively, they're able to get after the quarterback and stop the run. Now, they're getting after the quarterback is more a product of their defensive backfield locking up receivers for a lengthy bit of time. I feel like since Aiden Hutchinson has been out, they haven't got any as much natural pressure on quarterbacks. Za'Darius Smith has helped some, but they keep having injury after injury on the defensive side, so it has shown to be somewhat of an issue. But nonetheless, they've overcome it, and I think they've maintained that they are looking like the best team in the league right now. At number 2, I had to put the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are coming off a huge win against Baltimore. They have the second best complete team in the league right now. Again, Saquon Barkley, second in MVP voting to me, showing that they have a balanced attack. Even with their injuries at receiver, A.J. Brown has been consistent. And the most important part is Jalen Hurts has done a much better job at not turning the ball over. So their offense has been more productive, more efficient, and their defense has just been getting after it. Like I said earlier, it was supposed to be a weak point, but they've definitely turned it up in the last 4 to 5 weeks, so they deserve to be in the number 2 spot. At number 3, I got to go with the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Bills, like I said, had an impressive win at home against San Francisco. Dominant win where they blew out San Francisco. Josh Allen, to me, right now, is the leader for MVP this year. He doesn't technically have the highest statistical numbers out of everyone, but I think his numbers are impressive enough, and what he's been able to do with the team, especially considering what was expected coming into the season with all the change they had, not even just offensively, but defensively too. If you recall, essentially their entire defensive backfield is different, and their starting 2 receivers are also different. So with that being into place, and they've had injuries at the tight end position, Dalton Kincaid has been out, but nonetheless, they've been able to run the ball more effectively with James Cook, and Josh Allen has definitely carried the way, and they look like the 3rd best team in the league right now. At number 4, I have to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, they're still tied for the best record in the league, but they have been not playing at the level that we expected them to. Once again, they had a game against a team that we would all agree they're much better than, come down to a last-second play, a last-second gaffe. In this case, it was the Raiders snapping the ball before the quarterback was ready, and Chiefs were able to recover the fumble. Of course, this led to some controversy because it seems like the Chiefs are always beneficiary of some last-second snafu, so to speak. And in this case, people are trying to say again that, it was the refs made the wrong call. All of that is pretty much bogus, but the important part is they do keep winning by any means necessary. And if they finish the year with the best record in the AFC, that's all that really matters anyway, because then they get the first round bye. We'll see if it holds steady. Right now, they're definitely still a top 5 team in the league, but had to slide them down to number 4. And then rounding out the top 5, I had to go with the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings, as I mentioned earlier, are a team that's been kind of slept on. They only have 2 losses on the year, and one of those losses was a close loss to Detroit, which, again, I mentioned was the best team in the league. So, and they have an opportunity to play them again later this season. We'll see how that goes, but I think they definitely deserve to be in this 5th spot. Their offense and their defense have been very effective, and they've proven to be better than everybody else that's not in this top 5 to this point in the season. Now for my worst 5, bringing in the beginning of the worst 5 at 28, have to go with the New England Patriots. Now, the Patriots have been playing better than they were earlier in the season. As I mentioned in previous weeks, I'm very impressed with the way Drake May has shown himself. I think he has solidified himself as their future quarterback. I think they're definitely going to build around him going forward. Unfortunately, the overall team depth of talent is not to the level where it needs to be for them to not be a bottom 5 team. They do, week after week, play competitively. This game they lost this week against the Colts came down to the Colts going for a 2-point conversion at the end of the game and getting it, which is how they lost by 1 point. So they've definitely shown fight. I still feel like they should be very happy with the job that Gerard Mayo has done in his first year as a head coach. And they have a bright future looking forward because they do have some other young players. But as of today, they definitely still deserve to be in this bottom 5. At number 29, we have to go with the New York Jets. Their abysmal season just continues to pile on. They started off this game against Seattle up 21-7. Aaron Rodgers looked like he was somewhat of his old self. He was moving around very well. I saw a play where he scrambled all the way left and then scrambled all the way right and was able to throw the ball down the field on a rope. That's like vintage Aaron Rodgers. Unfortunately, he reverted back to what he's looked like more recently. Not that many plays after that when he threw a pick 6. It really changed the momentum of the game, and the Jets didn't score another point for the rest of the game, and they ended up losing. They've not mathematically been eliminated from playoff contention, but I think everybody can tell at this point that they're not making the playoffs. I know Aaron Rodgers was on the Pat McAfee show earlier today talking about them just having a mentality of going out each week and, trying to get a win and just enjoy the moment. But from a larger picture scale, we all know that the Jets season is done, and that's why they're in the 29th spot right now. Now, at 30, we got to go with the Las Vegas Raiders. Yes, they deserve to still be in this bottom 5. I did move them up 1 spot from last week because I felt like they did show some fight in this game against the Chiefs. It's a division rival. I feel like every single year the Raiders always give their best effort against the Chiefs because it's probably the most historic rivalry in the NFL. The only other one that I would say is close is between Green Bay and Chicago. But I feel like because Chicago has been so bad for so many years, it's not on the same level. I do feel like the Chiefs and Raiders is the best rivalry in the NFL. But the Raiders show fight. They put themselves in a position to where they could have won if they didn't make a mistake. I actually don't think the kicker would have made that last-second field goal considering he had already missed 2 from about the same distance. But nonetheless, they are fighting. I do think that Antonio Pierce deserves to keep his job even though they have an abysmal record right now. But because of that record, that is why they are in at 30, but not any lower. At 31 right now, we got to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars, very pathetic right now. Yes, the final score of the game against Houston looked like, it was a competitive game, but the game really wasn't. And especially with Trevor Lawrence taking a hit and ending up with a concussion, he probably won't be back for the rest of the season just based on how the season is going. It's like, what's the point of him bringing him back, even if he is cleared from concussion in the next week or two? It's not like they're going to make the playoffs. It's not like they have anything really to play for. And they just gave him a brand new contract. So you might as well just rest him for the rest of the season. Let him get completely healthy and see what you have in some of these other younger players. But overall, I just feel like Jacksonville hasn't showed much fight. I know they haven't fired Doug Peterson, but I just feel like it's inevitable. I think they're just waiting to the end of the season. I don't see him making it into next season. And they deserve to be in this second to last spot at 31. But they're not the worst team in the league. Bringing in the rear at number 32, we got to go with the New York Giants. I mentioned how pathetic it was last week about them changing their whole roster to try to see what they had in Daniel Jones. And then last week, they ended up cutting him. There was all this false hope that DeVito was going to come in and do something, but that was bogus. Nobody with any type of football knowledge actually expected them to do anything, and they didn't. And they looked pathetic. Even in a game where they weren't playing a super tough opponent, they made the Cowboys with Cooper Rush look like they were a playoff team, which they're not. So definitely nothing positive to look forward for the Giants. Honestly, for their sake, they should be happy that they lost the game. They should be happy for every game they lose so that they can get closer to the number one pick in the draft and then draft a quarterback with their first pick in this upcoming draft. Probably Shedeur Sanders, but nonetheless, that's the only thing I would say Giants fans have something positive to look forward to, because as it pertains to this season, it's a wrap and they're pretty much trash. So that's it for this week's episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please make sure you like and subscribe and share with everyone possible. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Peace.